Welcome to Deal Playbook, the show where we decode the real strategies of leverage behind scaling, acquiring, and exiting. I'm Tom Shipley, and after building and selling 16 companies, generating over $2 billion in sales, raising hundreds of millions in capital, and leading through chaos and opportunity, I've learned one thing. Success doesn't come from playing harder, it comes from playing smarter. Every episode, we will break down tactical frameworks, investor insights, and mindset shifts that move you from deal hunter to deal architect. This is your insider's guide to creating exponential growth and wealth through leverage, capital, and connection. Welcome to Deal Playbook. Let's get to work.
Most people who are successful never become super successful. So if you make $300,000-$400,000 a year, it's almost a guarantee that you will never make $2 to $5 million a year. It's just impossible. So because you get so busy at doing the thing that you're doing, you can do a couple more surgeries, you can sell a couple more policies, you can bring on a couple bigger clients, you can transact a little more, but you will ultimately lose the battle against Father Time because there's only so much time, there's only so much you can charge per hour, there's only so much of a percentage you can take on a deal, and eventually you run out. So that rethinking of going from doing to building is a huge part for business owners.
Hi, I'm Tom Shipley, and I'm extremely excited to have Chris Jarvis here with us. Let me share with you a little about Chris Jarvis. Beyond his 18 books, including Be the Giraffe, host of To Be the Giraffe TV, and he also delivered a TED Talk that generated over 4.5 million views. He's a financial fixer and a stirring speaker. He'll help you see differently so that you see business differently, money differently, and life differently. Today we're going to spend time really drilling and understanding what that means. For decades, Chris has helped hundreds of successful entrepreneurs and wealthy families build, protect, and transfer significant wealth. Along the way, he's discovered some unusual paths to standing out and reaching the highest level of success. And with that, I want to introduce you to my friend, Chris Jarvis.
Hey, Tom, it's good to be here.
Hey, Chris. It's great to see you. So just so we get a good orientation, can you share what you're doing now in your life? And then we're going to go back and do a little bit of history and how you're got to doing what you're doing. Then we're going to go into some key tactics that people can learn from. Okay?
All right, that's a lot. What am I doing now? So other than doing this podcast with you, I am helping. What I find, this is going to lead right into the rest of it, I think. I'm helping people eliminate the hurdles of money, whether it's those financial hurdles are stopping them from growing their business or stopping them from building a lasting legacy. I'm helping remove those things. So it's the financial fixing stuff is a lot of math and it's a lot of technical expertise that goes into that. But unsurprisingly for, I'm sure you and the audience, there's a lot of psychological stuff on that side. So unpacking that, it's not as easy as, well, just make more money or just spend less. There's a deep connection between money and psychology. Kind of our emotion and our intellect have this interesting disconnect, and so that's where I'm spending a lot of time right now.
Okay, fantastic. And can you just give me a few examples of that, just to drive it home?
Sure. So a lot of things with business. The challenge with a business owner that I see is that, having been in this spot myself, so I think a lot of this is proxy for what I wish, the advice I wish I had 25 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that we're so busy building businesses and doing the thing that we do that we get stuck. We have our head in the weeds on certain things that are happening, and it requires us to leave what we're doing or how we're looking at things right now. I remember a speaker in one of my Vistage CEO groups years ago saying that you don't have big success is not the result of incremental change. If you want to have big success or big transformation, you need to change something drastically. And a few books ago, the theory was that, I did the research, most people who are successful never become super successful. So if you make $300,000-$400,000 a year, it's almost a guarantee that you will never make $2 to $5 million a year. It's just impossible. So because you get so busy at doing the thing that you're doing, you can do a couple more surgeries, you can sell a couple more policies, you can bring on a couple bigger clients, you can transact a little more, but you will ultimately lose the battle against Father Time, because there's only so much time, there's only so much you can charge per hour, there's only so much of a percentage you can take on a deal, and eventually you run out. So that rethinking of going from doing to building is a huge part for business owners. And part of that is getting them to reframe how they think. But then a big part is, how do you find the money, and how do you restructure the business, and how do you, for a lot of people who don't have the time to do that new thing, we come in and architect a structure that creates more free cash flow, so that if there's more time, you can pay for the assistant, you can pay for a COO, you can pay for a number two, you can offload some of the things to someone who's really good, so that you can move into that strategic visionary role that many of us savored when we started our businesses, and we have longed for ever since we got into operations and systems and processes.
Yeah, it's interesting when it's almost was painful, and it was almost like a hamster wheel when you said if you're used to making $300,000 to $400,000, the odds are significantly against you. You'll ever make $3 to $4 million a year, period. And what was really also I was thinking about is uh, most business owners says, yes, I'm making two, three, $400,000 a year right now. I'm comfortable, but I'm building real equity value in my business. The reality that no one tells you is that 80% of all businesses that go up for sale will never sell. They might end up getting term sheets, and even those that get term sheets, 70, 80% of those don't close. So again, and therefore what happens then? And then there's this, you know, the options become less and less as you start going through declining or failed processes. And so what you said as, I'm going to work my ass off, I'm going to put in the 60 to 70 hours a week necessary to be a great entrepreneur. I'm going to build a good business, and therefore, but I can live off of this 2 to 3 or 400,000 a year and live fine. But my real payday for long term is going to be to sell the business, which in most cases never come. And that's the fallacy.
Yeah, that 100%. It's we talk about confirmation bias, and people believe the things that they want to believe, that confirm what they were already thinking. But there's also this falling in love with an outcome, or falling in love with a story that may not be reality. And that's the
Mhm.
entrepreneur's curse of, no, but I'm missing the kids' baseball game, and I'm 30 pounds overweight, and I'm missing out on all these things because I'm working toward this big exit, this big
Mhm.
thing at the
Mhm.
end. And what ends up happening is their identity gets sucked up into the company, and they end up spending a lot of their life winning. Kind of going back to my original comment, they spend a lot of time fighting little battles, and these are the Pyrrhic victories where you win the battle, lose the war. And the cost of it is so high because they're trying to win all the little battles. And when I'm coaching people pre-sale, they get so caught up in well, I think the company's worth this, or that there's something that they have a hang up about. And at the end of the day, I get it, you're not the boss, but why did you become an entrepreneur because you wanted to build a compliance manual, because you wanted to manage investors, because you wanted to uh, you know just get into the employee handbook? Like, is that really what you went into this for? Because I'm going to guess it wasn't. And so a lot of times when entrepreneurs are getting ready to sell, this whole idea of, it's my identity and I'm the boss, but you hate your life, and you're 30 pounds overweight, and you're busting your ass, and you're living in a fairy tale world way out in the future. And what you really want is to go back to the thing that you love, the vision you had, whether you're an engineer and you like to design things, or you're a salesperson and you want to sell, or you want to have communication, or you want to be the pitch guy, or whatever the thing is. You didn't do it to get into ops, to get into processes, to get into technology, to get into systems. And no entrepreneur I know has a true love for the Six Sigma mentality. Like, that's not what they did it for. They were much more creative. And so a big piece of this is, does this transaction help you go back to doing the thing that you actually love, that you have been deep down longing to do? And maybe this new endeavor, this new roll up, this new opportunity will let you go back to doing the thing that you actually love, and get rid of all the crap you hate doing. What an interesting idea. Yeah, you're not the boss anymore, but I go to an acupuncturist every week, and every day he asks me what I want to do. Am I going off my shoulder, my back, my knee, my foot, whatever? He said, "You're the boss." And my joking line for a long time was, "Well, I want to file a complaint for the awful work environment that's created." Like you're the entrepreneur.
Yeah. I always say that. I always felt that my team might thought I was a great leader, but as a person who worked for myself, I've been horrible to myself all these years. I'm the worst guy ever. I drive myself, never give myself time off. But the reality is what you were just talking to is a certain group of entrepreneurs. There's another group of entrepreneurs, which is the one that I fall in the bucket of, is I am the entrepreneur who loves the game. Do not take me away from this game. I don't do it because I love marketing, but it's not why I do it. I love business development. It's not why I do it. So if you strip me back to that role, I feel very constrained. I love the game. I love building. So when I have an exit, I might pay my dues to make sure there's a smooth transition for this legacy that I built. But ultimately, my goal is to get back in the game of building businesses. And in my case, I finally got smart after building business from scratch, where the real game for me is to acquire, scale, and exit, or acquire, scale, merge, and exit as far as my playbook. But again, it's all in the great game of entrepreneurship. Chris, so let me drill down the question. If you look over the last couple of years, what would you say the biggest win that you've achieved for family, or maybe one or two examples that helps with just people understanding what you do, the magic that you do, is one or two of the biggest wins that you've done with either an entrepreneur or family?
Yeah, I've got a family that's worth. We're just wrapping up a plan where these people immigrated from Russia with $1,000 in their pocket, built an education company that was ended up generating 50, $75 million of wealth for them. So they have quite a bit of money, but they were teachers before they built a business around education, and they of course were immigrants who had no money. So there's this sense of, what do I have? And transitioning from, I don't want to lose everything, and all my money's in Vanguard, so everything is, I'm just trying to minimize the fees on things. They kept winning a lot of little battles, and but overall the weight of the wealth was so heavy. The weight of that, the weight of the inheritance, the weight of, what are the kids going to do with the money? What does this look like? For them, being 50s, early 60s, and for them it was the weight and the stress. It wasn't so much the economics and the technical nature of how do we eliminate all this tax, which we've been able to get rid of 95% of the estate tax and quite a bit of capital gains tax with some technical stuff. But the bigger thing isn't the number, because they're going to leave their heirs, depending on how much their stuff grows to. It could be 100, it could be 150, it could be 200 million by projection, without any tax. Whether it's 100 or it's 200, it's more than they will left, and it's more than their kids need. But to them, it was the weight of the money and realizing, oh, I can spend more money for planning. I can bring on good people. I can pay people for their time to help us rethink what we're doing, help educate our kids on the money and what the purpose of it is and what matters and what our values are. That, I know this is a family example, not a business example, but I think it plays through to the whole business idea of, you became successful because you pinched pennies and you made everything work and you kept grinding out a life. That at the end of the day, getting somebody comfortable with what they're doing and why they're doing it, and helping them see the vision and appreciate that it's not about price, it's about value when it comes to partners and people you pay. And so just watching somebody shift their thought process from, everybody's out to get me and I got to keep all the expenses low, and I'm back to eating cheaply because that's how I grew up. I think just watching a family change the way they act, even buying a piece of property to live closer to one of the children, even though the real estate market wasn't ideal for that type of transaction, them making a decision that was going to improve their quality of life, not be hamstrung by this is just about, my P&L this month, right? What did I spend, and was everything a good investment? It's like, oh, I'm starting to invest in me. I'm investing. So it's that watching people shift from the spend mentality versus invest mentality. That I had someone on my show who said, I don't spend any time. I look at everything as an investment. It's an investment in my health. It's an investment in my relationships, and an investment in my future. It's an investment in my kids. And he gave me that advice right before I took my kids to Europe for a few weeks. And it was, if you've traveled with your young adult, almost adult children, you realize it's not stress-free in that, like, they're adults and think they're adults, but they're not adults when it comes to picking up the paycheck. So it's, there's a balance in just realizing that I don't know when I'm going to be able to do this again. And I'm investing in them and showing them things, and it's not, it's just different. So for me, that particular example is about watching people shift from everything being, all the feelings about money being negative, and shifting from spending to investing. I think that's a very recent one that has been rewarding for me, because at the end of the day, I don't care what you do with your money as long as you don't stress about it, right? Whatever you do with your business, some people want a lifestyle business, and that's perfectly fine. But other people want to grow, which is also great. But you can't want to leave a legacy for 100 years and be worried about things that only affect, like, how much you're paying for lunch for your staff on a Friday, right?
Right.
They're disconnected.
So let me ask a question. Let me just bring a hypothetical in, okay?
Yeah, sure.
I have a business. I'm pulling out about $450,000 a year out of the business. Let me do this. It's a business that generates, for myself and my partner, we pull out $400,000 a year from the business. And we know that we want to sell it in 4 to 5 years. It's growing very nicely at 10 to 15%. We're looking at other strategic alternatives, but really we're just really good at what we do in our business, in our service business. And this is how we've been growing it for the last 15 years. And it's structured as, basically is I personally own 50, my partner owns 50. And that's the way we structure it. And we're paying, obviously it's pass-through income. LLC goes to us directly. So, and then we're paying ordinary income on that, period. Yeah. So, and then assuming that when we sell, we'll have, basically there'll be capital gains. Yeah. So what's and I'm living in the beautiful state of New Jersey, where I get a really nice state income tax as well as my federal. So
yeah, so beyond what you're living, this is very common. So you've got people, their accountants have given them the terrible advice that everything should be in an LLC. They tell them to zero out their taxes every year, so you run a whole lot of expenses through the company, and it's just a mistake on so many levels. What's a mistake is that it's not a mistake to grow your business organically. Most businesses that grow really big, all the unicorns are venture backed, they take outside capital. If you're not going to take outside capital, then you have to fund this organically. But if you're funding this organically with half the money you make, so you take your salary of whatever you need to live, and at the end of the year, there's $500,000 left over for you and your partner. Like, well, we don't want to pay tax on phantom income, so we're going to look for all the things we can deduct. And that's the best advice you're getting from your accountant or your financial advisor. It's really, I mean, this from selling companies, and I know you asked the question for the audience, not for yourself. It's really, people want businesses that are cash cows, that are throwing off income and that have opportunity and that own assets that can be scaled and leveraged with other people. That's why they're putting their money in. I remember, I'll get to the answer, but I remember a mentor of mine, Hunt Ramsbottom. I met him out in LA when I was from Rhode Island, and so was he, which was an unusual thing to meet somebody in California from the other side of the country. And I can remember him telling me that when he was doing roll-ups, he always brought in advisors from other industries, because he said, if I'm going to borrow money, I got to pay my investors, I've got to pay my team, I'm going to put time in. I can't buy $100 million worth of companies and then grow them a little. I need to grow this thing to 200 or 300 if everybody's going to make money. Otherwise, it's a complete waste of my time. So he always brought advisors and executives from other industries so they could find creative solutions, not incremental change. And so where I'm going with that is, if you want to grow a platform, you need to invest in technology. If you're not going to take outside investment, you have to create, some type of leverage and not have the organic growth be so expensive. And the expensive part is paying 50% tax. So, one of the simple things that that we think about is, how do we create different structures for a business? Can we use an LLC tax as an S corp? Can we use an LLC tax as a partnership? Can we use an S corp? Can we use a C corp? Is there some level of all of these different entities that's more efficient? And we realize that some sales are going to be asset sales and some are going to be stock sales. So you can't put everything in a C corp and do an asset sale because you're going to have significant tax. But if you can combine an S corp and a C corp, then you can pay taxes at 20% or 21 or 30 as opposed to 50, which immediately is a 40% increase in EBITDA, like right off the get-go. And what I find from a simple restructure, and depending on if you have, if you're going to invest in technology, you're going to want to have an IP company separate. And there's a lot of things we've done for different deals in the past, but that layering different entities is what you need as a business owner to give you flexibility, to give you tax flexibility, to make sure you take advantage of the new depreciation, accelerated depreciation, or the revival of accelerated depreciation. How do we need a flow through entity for depreciation, and we want tax at 21% and we want deductions at 41%. Like that math. I was a mathematician, majored in math, was an actuary. That's my background. There's ways to maneuver these things. So you want all the gains to be low tax and you want all the losses to be to offset high tax. And so just moving those pieces around.
Okay, so for people who don't understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
can you break it down and maybe go into a little specific example so people are following and understanding this?
Yeah. So we worked with a medical practice that ended up getting acquired multiple times by PE, had recapped, ended up being one of the largest, ended up being the largest practice in its specialty in America. And they had multiple entities. They had a corporation that was managing certain risks and other processes. They had a surgery center. They had the medical practice, which had to be owned by the physicians, obviously. And by layering things in and moving money from an operating practice that had to be owned by individuals, that was a flow through for obvious reasons. They had a separate flow through entity for their real estate. So for all their depreciation and equipment, they'd get the flow through that entity, which would give them a loss. The depreciation would offset their salaries as physicians that would come through the medical practice. The money in the C corp, which was then used, which was taxed at a much lower rate, less than half.
Now, the C corp was set up as a parent above the LLCs, or how is that?
Not a parent, a sister, brother, sister, in the sense that it provided services to the other entities, and separately, because all of the practitioners, the physicians, had families. The problem with a medical practice, like a law practice, unlike a branding agency or a traditional manufacturer, is that you can't have somebody else own a professional practice who's not licensed as a professional. So you can't do any estate planning. But what you could do is have the real estate company owned by a trust for children. You could have the C corp marketing company or the IP company owned by trust for the children. So we found ways to start stripping value out of the taxable estate, so that we're killing two birds with one stone. Because the challenge is, if you own the company yourself, and I understand most people do that because the kids are too young, or they don't know how much is going to be there. In New Jersey, you lose 50%. So $1 million becomes $500,000. And then if you're worth more than 15 million as an individual, 30 million as a couple, which all of my clients either are or want to be and are on track for that, then a dollar earned is really only 30 cents. So because you're going to lose half of it to income tax, then you're going to lose 40% of what's left to estate tax. So if I can set up a trust owned by the kids and have it out of the estate, and then that company pays 20% tax, like I'm almost tripling the amount of money that I'm growing for the kids in
Mm,
that thing. And so then I have that company invest in technology and all the things that companies need to scale. So it's just thinking a little bit ahead to how do we create the cash flows. We're mindful to the contracts. So what would a private equity firm or investment bank want to pay for? And so how do we structure things so that you can get out of the contracts you want to get out of? So the
mhm.
valuation gets boosted. It's just a different way to structure, and the math always, well, the clients won't move forward if it doesn't make sense, but it always works. That's the point, is how do we create wealth that, or structures that generate more cash? I don't know any entrepreneurs who don't want more cash and don't want more time. And so we try to find them, well, we find them cash so that they can pay somebody to do something, which will then give them more time.
Now, you typically hear entrepreneurs saying, I hear C Corp and I hear double taxation.
Yep. And and I majored in math, so I'm going to tell you you're wrong. Because it's like, when they said, when your math teacher said back in geometry, the proof is left to the reader, or that was in the book, very few people ever do the proof. They're like, oh, good God, at least I don't need to do it. So we'll just leave that alone. It's one more thing
Yeah.
Mr. Bloomer doesn't have to teach us. And so the truth is, let's just do the math. So ordinary income, assume now, I'm talking about the 1%. I'm not talking about people who are just making money for the first time. So
That's correct.
if you're making 100 grand a year, yep, I get it. The C Corp's not a great idea. But if you're trying to grow a company that you can sell, realistically, no one's buying your business that's throwing off 100 grand. So you're talking about a business you'd like to throw off $1 million a year, as an example.
Mhm.
So at $1 million, the last $500,000 gets taxed at 40 to 50%. When you put in highest marginal federal tax is
Mhm.
37, Medicare is 3.8 for people making more than 300,000, and then you've got state income tax, whatever that is,
Mhm.
which can be anywhere from 0 to 13.3 depending on where you live. So
Mhm.
if we say let's just say it's 41 to keep the math easy, which is no
Mhm.
state income tax, just Medicare and federal, and then the largest corporate tax rate is 21. So we'll leave the state out of it for now. So the difference between 41 and 21 is 20. So on $1 million distribution, you'd have 600,000, a little less, right? But you'd have $600,000 left after tax.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you do it in a corporation, you'd have almost 800,000 left. Now, it's half as much tax. Yes, the money is sitting in the corporation. Leave all of the really cool ways that we know how to get money out of a C Corp to remove the tax. Just assume I don't know any of them. And you grow that money in the C Corp. You make investments, you make loans, you buy technology, you build your company. And then a year or two down the road, you decide to shut down the C Corp and say, okay, I'm done with this company. I'm going to distribute the assets to the owner of the C Corp,
Mhm.
who's going to pay capital gains tax on that
Right.
800,000, which capital gain taxes are 20%. Even if you add 3.8 Medicare, that's 24%. The 24% of the 80 is actually less than 20. So the
Mhm.
tax, without any of the creative stuff and without even factoring in being able to use the money for as long as you need, double tax for the high income taxpayer is actually better, minimally better
Mhm.
than single tax if you do it that way and you had use of the money. And the example I use with people is, if you went to pay your tax bill and the IRS gave you a box that said, would you like to pay half of the tax now and half in 3 years? Who wouldn't check that box?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
without any of the creative stuff, like we know how to get money out of C Corps with leverage and debt and
Right.
probably cut the tax by 75%. But the truth is, even without any of that, assuming you don't believe any of the things that I can do, just do the math and say, would I like to use this money? Would I like to defer half the tax and have the use of the IRS's money at no cost for
Mhm.
3, 5,
Mhm.
7, 10 years?
Mhm.
Some people say, well, you can't have all this growth. Apple's sitting on how many billions of dollars of cash? Like they're a C corp, so there's no law that you
Yeah.
have to distribute it as long as you're
Yeah.
using the cash to further advance the business. You're fine. So this whole C corp thing, people have been taught it's double taxation. Yeah,
Oh,
which the math actually says it's less. So
you
it's
ready? You ready to throw out an impossibility? Is remember you were shared with me your new strategy for the way you can structure almost any company making over, I think it's 350 or 400,000 a year, and with significant tax savings. Can you cover that in 3 minutes, or do we need more time?
well, yeah. I mean, quickly, the idea with any business is inevitably every business owner we meet has something that he or she wants to do. They have something that they believe would help their company get to the next level, whether it's hiring a
Mhm.
CFO, COO, CIO, investing in technology, buying their own business, acquiring a small player. There's something they want to do, and they just don't have the money to do it. Like I don't know any entrepreneurs who don't have ideas.
Mhm.
I, I
Mhm.
I have ones that don't have the time or don't have the money to acquire those
Mhm.
things. And if they just had it, it's like, God, if somebody would just give me some money, I would take it and I could do all these great things. So what
Mhm.
we do, we have a done for you model where we create structures that affix to existing companies that will allow them to take advantage of the flow through entity they already have to use all of their deductions, but then pocket at a lower tax rate a management company that will take the profit as opposed to distributing it and then redeploy that capital into those things that you want to do, whether it's the building or it's the acquisition or it's technology, whatever that might be. So that's the thing that we're doing for folks, and layering in some estate planning where you still control the money. You're the manager that manages where all this money goes. You pull all the strings, but a trust for your kids owns a significant percentage of all the new money. So we're creating estate planning without giving up control. We're creating tax arbitrage with another entity, and we're letting the entrepreneur go back to doing the things that the entrepreneur wants to do, not selling to private equity and giving up all the control, not um, deciding to get an LLM in tax. Go back to doing the thing you're doing. We're just going to create the cash and the structure to facilitate that. So it's a great, if you're not ready to go to private equity or find a lot of capital, or you just don't have that kind of bankable business that has a lot of assets, or you don't want to personally guarantee your own wealth, this is the step in between on how do we create more capital to grow and test and build this thing to the point where maybe we can get on the radar of somebody who might have capital because we're just not
Mhm.
that size
Mhm.
yet.
I understand. And so, as you share with me, is you're going to create a structure where essentially your tax savings is paying for your scaling of your business. And that's
Correct.
how you're accessing is you're assessing basically money that would be normally paid just in straight taxes, and you're redeploying that for scaling your business, which everyone benefits from.
That's the plan.
Outstanding.
It's
Outstanding.
it's your own personal government subsidy, I guess.
Okay. Okay. And then share with me a little bit. We have 2 minutes remaining about how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Math major, actuary, was a finance guy. I got into tax, and it was people, unsurprisingly, people who made a lot of money, who wanted to pay a lot of taxes, made a lot of money. And I learned that people make a lot of money, do a lot of wacky shit. And so I've seen a lot of interesting business models. So I got brought in to help people scale their business, but I never forgot that tax thing. And there was just something growing up poor and being the oldest kid who had to have all the conversations about money between my parents, which I hated asking for money. I think deep down I've had this desire to figure out how do I help people do this without having to run around asking for money all the time because I had that pain. So it's funny when something from your childhood comes around and you realize it's it had a significant impact on your choices, whether you realized it was happening consciously or not. It's hard to raise. It's almost impossible to run a business well and raise capital at the same time.
Hmm.
And so, I think I got here by deep down seeing that nobody likes asking for money, and if you have to do it all day as a job, it's tough. So let's see if we can't help some of these entrepreneurs who are really creative, visionary people get there without having to sacrifice that part of their soul.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Deal Playbook. If today's episode sparked an idea or gave you an edge, share it, subscribe, or leave a review. Remember, opportunity doesn't wait, it's created. Until next time, keep building, keep scaling, and keep playing to win.